Hey.
Hey, cool. I guess that means we're live. I guess I can move this up here for now so I can look like I'm looking at you.
Hey, everyone.
Like I'm looking in my lap. Hi. We got some weird backgrounds here. What is this? Ooh, snowman. I could use some cooler weather. It's definitely hot here in Atlanta.
Define hot where you are.
So in freedom units, that is 82. Nope, that's my laptop temperature. Probably actually, it's probably about the same. Actually, yeah. Let's see, 87, which is, I don't know, like 35 in metrics.
Yeah, that's kind of warm.
Ish. 88. Yeah. And it looks like rain is inbound.
Yeah,
but
I think
yeah, it's toasty.
Only 23 Celsius here, so I think that's in like
23. Well, you're like
maybe
in the
even the high
penguins
60s
country above the North Pole.
Right? Where are you at, Roddy?
This is perfect. Yeah, for Santa,
Canada,
like for Roddy.
Canada. But to be fair, it has been really warm here. Right now, really warm for us is 29, 30 Celsius, like high 70s, low 80s, maybe.
Got it. Nice. Yeah, so let's see. Last time, I don't actually remember. What did we talk about last time? Oh, we showed that we actually had a client last time, I think was like as far as we had gotten, and it worked. Yeah. So we had like I took a trip to do some stuff, and because I was like not in the normal East Coast time zone, I was in Europe. It turned into like a mini coding retreat because none of my meetings are happening, or I'm not going to go to them because they're at 9 o'clock at night or whatever. So I actually was able to get quite a lot done. So let's see. I'm gonna share my screen, and this is gonna be hot mess. Entire screen. Oh, my phone is telling me to do something. What do you want me to do?
I like that ringtone, Eric. That's pretty retro.
Yeah, Zelda. Okay, share. Whoa, look at that. Okay, move this out of the way. Infinite screen loop. Come on, get bigger. All right, don't get bigger. See if I care. Okay. This is the server. Open the editor.
Oh, infinity tunnel mode.
That should have gone away, I would hope.
It did. It's gone away now.
Oh, okay. View appearance. Zoom in. Control equals. Does this work? Does work. We'll go one more. Whoa, maybe not. Well, close enough. Okay, so one of the things I did was, eventually this has to run on OpenShift. And so I was like, well, I guess we need to build the server into a container or something. And so I messed around a little bit with Godot and builds and exporting and some other stuff. And so what we did, or what I did, was I had found, oop, that went in the wrong window. Come up, come on. So I found this cool Pasu Godot server in Kubernetes, which builds container image. It was basically, it's just a container file with some deploy YAML stuff for Cube. I was like, okay, this will be a cool start. And then I started digging into it. And what I quickly realized was, hey folks, welcome to our stream. Oh, that's you already. I was like, hey, cool, let's run it. And then immediately it exploded, and I was like, oh, I wonder why. Oh, Godot over Mono. This isn't Mono. Oh, bummer. But so at a high level, what this thing does is it grabs the image that what I think is that the Godot project uses for their CI, for their own builds, for the actual engine itself. And then it runs an export in that container. Then it runs another layered step with a very minimal image to grab the actual Godot server, like the headless binary for Godot itself. And then ultimately it copies the built artifacts and the server into like a local folder and does some stuff. And then it runs when you run the container, it runs the server, right? So I ended up having to hack on this a bit because the Godot project uses like this mono prefix, and the URLs for grabbing things is all bizarro land. So I had to sort of massage the heck out of it. So Godot mono version there, and then I had to change this folder because it uses this mono prefix URL, whatever, and then I had to grab the mono server, not the regular server. And then the mono server has some subfolders, so I had to change this so that it actually like copied the server and the mono C# dependencies and some other stuff, blah, blah, blah. And then we have this logging config file that needed to be present, so that got copied. And then ultimately it does the thing, right? So it's been a minute since I built the container version of that. So let's do some do it live. Let's see, build SRT.
So the idea is we can containerize the server, roll it out on OpenShift, like consistently scale it up, move it around.
Yeah. So what I tried to do is set up a I'm just a bunch of failbook today history.
This is my first time to this stream, so I wanted to make sure I don't want to like.
Is it?
Rehash
oh, it's just Roddy and
things you
me on
guys
the
have
other
done
one.
Before,
No,
so.
yeah, no, but it's a good point. We haven't said anything. So build container file, Godot server, Godot test. Okay, I think it'll be 8:49. So I'll kick this off. Yeah, so the goal would be that we would do our own CI. So whenever anything gets merged to the main branch, that would cause like Quay to build the container image, and then we would do some testing or whatever. And if we like it, then we would give it a real image tag and then change whatever the public deployment of the game server is so that it would start using the new server, right? Okay, so that appears to have blown up. Oh, because I moved the logger config file into a config folder, but it still should work. So let's do this. So here I've got my Artemis server running locally. I did put one like on a T2 micro in Amazon, so we can maybe dork with that today,
Cool.
if I can remember how to access it. But Artemis is running here, and so if I do Podman images, what we see is the SRT aims. Nope, that's because the build failed, so it didn't actually. Right. Okay. Sorry. So let me just comment out this one and do that build again. There's probably a smarter way to do this so that it goes faster, because it ends up thinking that it can't use cached stuff even though nothing has changed. Those errors are actually not errors. Like that has to do with when Godot does a build of our project. For some reason, the way we're compiling, pulling in Protobuf, like the C# files that get generated from the compiled Protobuf, throws Godot errors, but they're not real errors. Like it still just works fine.
It's a bit confusing.
Okay. Yeah, it's a bit confusing. They're not important errors. How about that? So here's the
like,
successfully tagged localhost.
Are coming up as errors, but they're really just warnings, probably.
One could say. Okay, so 21 seconds ago, here's our SRT server. If I run ITRM.
Quick question, Eric.
Yes, sir.
What have you guys like explained sort of the architecture before? I guess I'm assuming in the past everyone
probably, but we can go back and talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
So let me run this and then we'll see what happens. So it started to work and then immediately blew up because I remember what the issue is. So it's trying to connect to localhost 5672, but remember that Podman especially and other container runtimes, they do network namespacing. So localhost 5672 is actually inside the running container and there's no AMQP there. So that's why it explodes immediately, right? So from a container-y perspective, what we actually have to do is, this is a perfect segue. I'm glad this blew up this way. We need to tell the game server like to use a different destination, which brings us to a code change that I made, which was, hey, if we're going to run in a container, we need to support environment variables as like configuration. Yes, you could inject the config file in Kubernetes with config maps, and that makes it easy. But the proper way to do it is with config as environment. Oops, don't do that. I don't know what that was going to do.
So that would be considered best practice.
Yeah, from a containerization perspective, best practice is always use environment variables, right? Because then you set the environment variables on the deployment for the environment. So production uses this set of variables, and that way it doesn't matter what gets deployed. You don't have to worry about editing a file. You just, whatever the current environment variables are, that's what happens. So we want load config. And so
I've seen like working with like a bunch of customers that I talk to, like that's one of the first things like that comes up. Like, how do I, if you're going from this mindset of game dev in a non-containerized world to going to game dev in containers, like that's one of the first things you kind of got to get fixed in your head, because everything in OpenShift is like this software-defined networking layer. And so like you're going to have to do service discovery and all sorts of things. If you're hard coding those things because you assumed that they were always in the same place, it's a paradigm shift.
Yeah, and not even specific to OpenShift, right? Like containers generally, Kubernetes specifically, like regardless of whose Kubernetes solution you're using, right? We'd prefer to use OpenShift, but if you're using, Amazon or Google or whatever, Azure, this is sort of best practice generally when it comes to containers and Kubernetes. So what I do is I say, hey, same as we used to do, try to load the config file. If the file was loaded successfully, read the variables. I know that sounds dumb and backwards, but there's a reason. Sorry, read the variables from the file. My bad. That's not dumb or backwards. So we try to load the file. If we loaded the file successfully, we set the values out of the file. Then after we set the values from what we find in the file, we immediately overwrite any that were set in the environment. So environment variables trump file-based configuration. File-based configuration trumps default settings of the server. So from a priority hierarchy perspective, and this is kind of best practice from a container, right? Like there should be defaults that will cause it to presumably not fail in the widest array of conditions. Then use or look for a file. And then if we pass anything in via environment, like that's ultimately the most important option or version or whatever you want to call it. So here I go, pull the stuff from the environment, anything that's not null, overwrite, and then spit out whatever it is that we actually did. So pretty trivial, pretty simple. So what we can see is the URL. Where do I get the URL? Oh, annoyingly. So one caveat here is the way the server is done, and this is not a good practice. The AMQP configuration for how we talk to the message broker and Dudash, we'll go back to the architecture in a second. This has its own config thing, which isn't necessarily good. So it has its own config thing, but it does the same thing, right? Get the value out of the file if we found it, otherwise override it with the URL from the environment variable. So what I need to do is grep run. I'm pretty sure I did this once before. Apparently I did not. I lied. So I need to pass in the environment variable equals IP adder. What's the IP address of my laptop? It's this. What's the format of the string? It's like AMQP. Yeah,
AMQP:// your IP
word 5672. Okay, this should work.
Standard.
Woo! Wait. Well, it didn't say finished initializing, but it didn't blow up. We have a connection, so that's a new connection. So that's a little concerning. Go back to init. Do we not call it init? I thought we called it init. Command receive, scheme event, send command, initialize. Initializing AMQP connection and then finished initializing. It never even said it was initializing. That's weird. Oh, I bet this might be causing it. Bummer. Anyway, so we'll fix that later. Yeah. Architecture. So for those who are watching, we actually have a web page now, srtgame.com. Links to the different repos. I guess we need to add one for the defensive programming. Yes, indeed. We need to add one for the new Protobuf. But if we go and look at the architecture really quickly, this isn't entirely accurate because we're not using Phaser anymore. But basically, there is one or more servers that get messages through this message broker. There's a client. The game client connects to the broker. And then using Protobuf, which is a binary message protocol buffer thing, we communicate back and forth between the client and the server. Ultimately, we might persist data into some kind of data store, maybe the Red Hat Data Grid, which is the InfiniSpan project. Someday we'll get authentication working with Keycloak / Red Hat single sign-on. But this is kind of a high-level architecture of what's going on.
And then potentially like other microservices too that are sort of TBD, undefined as we
absolutely. Good point.
Like player chat systems and all that kind of stuff could still rely on the same messaging infrastructure, right?
Yep, and like the chat lobby thing, right? Like that's probably going to be some Webby Node.js microservice.
Right, that talks to the same backend.
Yep. Okay, so I don't want to fix this right now. We can maybe fix this later. So what I'm going to do is just run the game server locally. So if we see in this config folder, I've got the server config, which does talk to localhost, which is fine because I'm running this on my laptop directly. This is INI format stuff, so I just need to do SRT Godot server. This is using the standard export buildy process that Godot ships out of the box to export for Linux X11. Okay, and so we see we've got this AMQP connection running, and then in the background here is, it's not really the background. So this is the game server, which has a UI, which we don't need if it's running in a headless mode. But this is the debug UI that some of you have seen before. Depending on when the last time you looked was, I added this like selector that you can choose which player you want to focus on, and you can delete them. You can join new players, et cetera, et cetera. So that being said, what do we got here? This is the server, which I actually don't want. So now we're going to get into some like legit Godot stuff, straight up Godot stuff. So what I did was I incorporated some animations that Kalik made. Kalik's another gentleman on our team here. So this is the client. We have the support scene, which is the missile. Come on, missile. Okay, so we have this little missile doodad, and then Kalik made these cool animations for like flames and explosions. And so what I did was I just used a regular animated sprite and pulled in a bunch of images. This is 100% standard normal Godot stuff. It does not start as playing. We set some of that in code. And then there's this explosion animation, which also same kind of thing, right? Standard animated sprite, whatever. What does this mean? Node has one connection. There's a signal, right? Okay, and I'll explain that in a second. So if we go to the actual code for Space Missile, this is the client. I want the Space Missile code. So we do some, and again, I'm certainly no game designer, developer. I'm barely even a coder, right? So this is all my hack job interpretation of how things should happen. So what we did, let me do one other file. Nope, we're gonna start with, let's see, where did I do it? Okay, so when the missile gets added to the scene, we find the node for the animation of the flame, and we find the node for the explosion animation. And these are set to I'm going to use the term global. I'm probably not using that term correctly. Class, instance, whatever variable. One of you programmer guys, you tell me. So we've got these two variables that hold the node references. So when we go into the physics, where is launch, missile animation launch? So when the node is instantiated, when the missile is instantiated, I think I set the animation to play. So let me find the fire missile. Add to group, missile my player. All right, hold on. I know I'm like all over the place here. I gotta remember what I actually did. Expire.
In the process there, you were checking to see if it was launched and if the frame was greater than 30.
Play travel, I think. Okay, got it. So there's two different sets of animations for the animation. Why I did it this way, I could have made the explosion in animations, but I think I remember why I did it. So we've got this launch animation, which is like a little bit of an explodey kind of thing, mushroom cloud-ish. And then there's the travel animation, which is just like a flame front propagating, right? And so if I look at this, there's a point at which I tell it to play the launch animation, but I don't remember where that is. So hang on a second and I will find it. That's expire, update. Okay, so we're gonna do this. When in doubt, grab. Oh God, that's terrible. Not assets. Lots of files that are launched. Really? How does that work? Oop. There we go. Main scene game. Okay. Found it.
Basically, when you hit something else, that's when you want to like make it explode, probably.
No. So create missile for UID. So the way this works from so now we're gonna like back up all the way through the message. So what happens is the way that this is temporarily designed, and the reason I say temporarily is we're going to talk about performance issues in a moment. The way this is temporarily designed is the client is extraordinarily dumb. It doesn't really do anything locally. It pretty much is just a glorified input-output device and some graphical things. So when the player presses the shoot button, what happens is, let's see, where is that? So if they've pressed the shoot button, we process that input. And when we process the input, we create a message and then we send it to the server. So right now, when the player presses shoot, the client does nothing other than send a message. It doesn't draw anything. At some point, the server is like, hey, cool, somebody asked to shoot, I'm going to create a missile. And I will tell everybody that a missile was created. And so that's in this game event received, right? So we receive a game event, we deserialize it, and then we process it. And when we process it, we look at the type of message that it is. Oh, it's a create message? Cool. Is it a player? No. Is it a missile? Hey, yes, I got create for a missile. So then we go to this create missile method. The create missile method finally in the client is actually going to draw the missile. So the first thing we do is we check if there was already a missile, because if there was, something weird happened, like we actually got the messages out of order or whatever, so we'll just never mind. If it actually doesn't exist, if it's a legit, like we should make a missile, we instantiate a scene of missile, blah, 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 and then here's where we tell it to play the launch animation, right? We set the frame to 0 and we play the launch animation. Awesome. So then this is where I do hacky stuff. What I should do is use a signal here, but I didn't. I was even more ghetto than that and terrible. So what I said was, every time we process the missile, so basically every frame, check, are we still playing the launch animation, and did we get to the end of it? If we did, if the animation's still set for launch and we've reached the end, go back to 0 and then play the travel animation. Ugly hack. Shouldn't have done it this way, but this is what I did by accident. Okay, great. So missile, travel, 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 travel. Hey, that's great. What happens? So the way that the game works right now, you fire a missile, it goes pew, and then eventually it disappears if it doesn't hit anything or anyone. So the server will send a destroy message for a missile that is removed from the game, right? So if the message is about a missile, then we destroy a missile with a UID. When we destroy a missile with a UID, we call this expire function on the missile, right? So what does that expire function actually do? Space missile. Oh, I could have just done this. My bad. Hold on. Hold, please. Okay, expire. So we log a message because we're good programmers and we log everything. We hide the missile body, which is the sprite. We hide the animations. Again, this is dumb. I could have done it a different way. But you'll see why in a second. We stop the regular animation, and then we play the explosion. And then we set the missile owner to none. This is where it gets sort of important and critical, right? In the configuration for Space Missile in the scene, there is a signal connection for the explosion animation being finished to run a method, unsurprisingly named explosion animation finished. Why do I do this? Okay. On explosion animation finished, we remove the missile from the scene tree. And so I could have maybe done some like hackier logic where I checked which animation was playing, and when if the explosion one was the one that was playing and finished, like that's when I remove it from the like whatever. So again, the reason I set the owner to null is because we don't want to disappear the missile yet because we still have to play the explosion. We don't actually disappear the missile out of the scene until the explosion animation is finished. Kind of makes sense. Seems a little hacky. I'm sure some Godot expert will tell me I'm an idiot, but it works. It's functional. Probably terrible performance, but you know, we're not building the next Overwatch here.
We're going for working.
Huh?
We're going for working.
Yeah, we're going for function, and then maybe we'll make it work better. So there was a horse trainer that, long story short, I used to work with, and her saying was, "Get it done, get it right, get it pretty." So we're in get it done mode right now. Eventually, maybe we'll get it right. Huh?
Very applicable.
Yeah. Okay. So what are we gonna do? Let's go ahead and actually run the client so I can show you the animations, and maybe it will actually work. So what's happening right now is Godot is building the client under the covers, because that's what happens when you run it with VS Code. This is the errors that aren't errors. And then at some point, the client should pop up. My computer is probably going to melt down any moment now. Can you guys still hear me?
Yep.
Okay. My load average is 10. That's usually a bad sign. What can I turn off?
If you disappear, we'll take over.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll be John. Well, I'll be Erik since I'm Erik. Or X since that's my actual handle for stuff. Okay. So join the game. Hey, look, stuff. So a couple other things.
Oops, I think we're gonna lose them.
I still see his screen. No, I think we're losing your audio, Erik. We might have to pivot into showcasing some other aspect. Oh, the mouse is moving.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
So load average is 21. And we'll see how it on off. Can close that. Closing programs. Trying to save my here.
Erik, you still there?
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Yeah.
clear again now.
Okay. I closed a bunch of browser windows and bad stuff. Yeah, you would think that like an i7 with 32 gigs of RAM would like get the job done. Computers suck, man. I don't know what to tell you. So, okay. So server's running, right? I can spin this ship. What?
I was gonna say it might make sense to have a second laptop to just do the game and share the screen from there, and that way the live stream doesn't. Because you're doing all the live stream stuff too, and that's probably what's killing
Yeah,
it.
but that's browser. It's like it's really only my webcam. I'm not running like OBS or anything even locally, right? So it's just pulling browser. Anyway, so ship moves around. Hooray! It goes. It stops. And then when I fires the missiles, the first one sometimes takes forever and then just like vanishes. The second one usually works a little better, but this could also be because I had so much whatchamacallit, like load average spike that the messages might be taking a long time to actually like make it in and out. So if I restart everything,
Oh, there we go. We saw an explosion.
Yeah, but you can't see like the propagation because it moves so quickly. So I'm gonna stop everything and then restart. Okay, so we'll run our Temis.
Yeah, it looks nice when you run it locally without streaming involved.
One more time. See if this works a little better. But this actually is good timing because it's going to lead us into our performance discussion about messaging and updates and deltas and all that other kind of fun stuff. So let me see if I can get this to display well enough for you all to see it. My fan speed is 34,000 RPM.
34,000?
Now it's 65,000. Yeah, something's wrong with the display. Either the fan is broken or something's wrong with the display. But anyway, okay.
If
So here's the ship.
At that speed, the fan definitely would be broken.
Here's the missile. Nope, still acting weird. This is actually. Oh, there we go. Woohoo! That was a nice slow one. But you can see that we've got very weird variable performance, right? Like the missile fires. Sometimes it takes forever, and then it like is here and gone. Other times it's really fast, and it works right. Yeah. So like we've clearly got an issue. And again, this relates to like player presses the shoot button. It sends a message to the server. The server figures out what to do, tells everybody, hey, a missile got created, comes back to the client. The client draws the missile and then receives updates about where the missile is from the server. The client does nothing other than display what it's told about, right? And so that's expensive from a latency and throughput perspective. So what we started to talk about was like why are we doing it this way? Is there a better way? And the other thing I noticed was like, oh, okay, well, I know if there's a missile that's been fired, but I actually don't know anything about the missile, like when it's going to expire. I know what my speed is, but I actually don't know what my top speed is, so I can't display like a percentage or a bar or whatever. And so that opened up two conversations, right? So the first conversation was, hey, we probably need to look again at what we're doing with our message structure, if you will, right? Like we originally had thought we were going to use Box2D for physics, and the message Protobuf structure was all built around Box2D, and we didn't do that, or we're not doing that, and so now we've got all this unused cruft, and then we're also not doing anything with the client. The client's not doing any interpolation or guessing or whatever, and so in the case of like a slow message, the user experience on a client is pretty bad. So I'm going to stop sharing because I'm going to let Jason share, and if you want, Mr. Jason, you can walk us through some of the submodule stuff you're doing and the proto changes and some of those things. Is that cool? Can you do
Yeah,
that?
that's cool. And then I guess just to get everybody oriented, if you haven't tuned in before, like the reason, like what protocol buffers are. I don't know if you've covered that in a past stream, but like the short.
We did, but it doesn't hurt to do a 2-second review.
Yeah, I guess the 2-second is like basically it's this language independent, platform independent way of like serializing our data so that we can communicate it from the client to the server, from microservice to client to server, whatever, however we need to communicate it. This is our way of representing that data, that definition of it. So let's see if I can share. Does that work?
Yes, but I have to turn it on, which is weird. Okay, now it's on. I see your screen.
Cool. So where we were was we had been, so in the game dev repo, everything we're doing is open sourced. And we have a server and we have a client repo. So if we'll just look into the client real quick and see in the networking section, we had this proto folder that had these definitions. So like
can you bump your font size up just a little bit? Yeah, that's good.
So we were talking about the missiles. So I think the missile would be in the entity game buffer, right? So this is its type. It would have been like type missile, and it would have had a body that's related to the missile. This is the data structure that we're communicating the data in. And then the body, what we were sending was all this physics information. So it had the vector, which is where it is on the screen, the X and the Y location, which is really the most important part. And then all this other stuff that we weren't even using, which is the cruft you're talking about. Like just,
yeah, 90% of it was empty.
Just tons of physics kind of things that we aren't really using because it's too simple of a 2D body.
Well, these are all, if any of you have ever used Box2D in another life, these are all of the fields that Box2D supports for objects, for physics objects. And we're not using Box2D because technically we're not even using physics. Like at this point with the game, all we're doing is letting Godot handle collisions, and we're simulating the physics in a very hacky, I forget which game it's sort of roughly cloned from, but there basically isn't any physics. Like we just move the object based on the velocity, whatever the distance is, and detect if it hits something, and then at some point we'll figure out what to do when two ships collide, because right now they just kind of grind past each other because Godot doesn't really know what to do. But none of this information is important because, like I said, we're not using Box2D. Sorry.
Yeah, right. And then so the other thing about this is the way we were like we implemented this by having this code in the client, and then we also had the same code in the server, which you can imagine. Hey, maybe we decide to like pull something out of the client because we don't need all this physics stuff. Now the server has it. Maybe start sending them. You get like in a weird mismatch situation. So like we realized, hey, this doesn't make sense. Like we need one central location for this stuff to be like the source of truth.
In a way, Proto is like an API for stuff. So if we think about the act of communicating between the client and the server, the Proto defines an API for like all of the fields that are available to put in the message payload, but it's not like JSON in the sense that they JSON is structured but unordered. So as long as all of the fields for the most part are in the JSON payload, it doesn't matter if it's like foo bar key value, comma, rectangle square versus rectangle square, comma, foobar, like that information is the same because I'm just looking for keys and values. Protobuf is tightly packed binary data where like the byte order matters.
Yeah.
So
That's a really
that's
cool point. That's
closer.
what stomp, right? That's that it's binary, and that's one
Right.
of the
And so that makes it behave more like an API in the sense that if the deserialization of that binary object on the other side is using a different API version, then byte number 6 might have been something before, but now it's not the right value. So we decode it and all of a sudden like crazy things happen, right? Like buffer overflow, or just, it's just nonsense garbage data. We actually had that problem very early on when we were trying to do JavaScripty stuff and just trying to figure out how to pack the bytes the right way. And so it was like you'd send a message to the server and the server would decode it. And it's like, I don't know what kind of message this is because the byte order's bad. And so it's like not even, it's like sort of hierarchical in the way we've implemented it. And like byte number 2 was already wrong. And so it's like, I don't know what to do here. So yeah, so we were like, to Jason's point, having this in both repos, trying to keep it in sync seemed like it was a hot mess. So what did we do? Or what are we going to try to do?
So yeah, so we're in the midst of refactoring all this stuff. So I created this Protobuf's repo, which
So
is
are we live coding right now? Is that what's about to happen?
We might be. We should probably do that. We can so I think we're at a point where I'll show you what I did for the Protobuf repo, and then we can maybe flip over to the client server and try to
Yeah, no, definitely. Because that'll be a good rehash of like the C# conversion compiler and all that stuff.
So the proto files are now, this is going to be the new source of truth. They're all in one repo. And I added GitHub Actions. So the GitHub Actions are able to lint. So the lint fails because we've hacked some pretty ugly protobufs. I'll run a linter again. You can kind of see. Anytime you commit, this is gonna execute. Anytime you do a pull
anytime
request,
we commit to any, or anytime we commit to main?
To main.
Okay.
So yeah, so like we can have branches. Everybody can kind of work on their own. But when it needs to go back to the main source of truth, it should pass the linter. It doesn't have to pass the linter, but it has to pass the main branch builder. The main branch builder, let's just look real quick at the
Well, I want to see the linter failure.
Okay. You want to see the
show me how bad we are.
It's bad, man. It's bad.
It's Batman?
It's bad, man.
Oh, bad, man.
So there's a lot of little warnings like this should be suffixed, and it's mostly like cheesy things like uppercase versus lowercase. And
well, these are errors, not warnings, sir.
Well, this is what GitHub displays it as. If we look at the yeah, they are errors. So the way I lint is I use this tool called Buff, and you just basically say buff lint and you give it all your protos, and it'll go through and it'll tell you like basically why you suck.
So if anybody wants to contribute to this project, you could fix our linter errors.
A lot of these will be like 20-second fixes, like use snake lowercase or prefix with this prefix.
Yeah, and like the original protos were done in Protobuf version 2, right? And we're in Protobuf version 3 for quite some time now. So like in some ways, like syntactically, they're probably in compatibility mode.
Yeah.
Possibly.
Yeah. And speaking of compatibility, so the linter is just going to pop out errors, and it's probably going to keep doing that until we fix all the ugliness. But the builder,
the errors will continue until morale improves.
Exactly. The builder does do a check for breaking, which is going to say like between like some of the stuff you were alluding to, Eric. If I ended up like completely screwing up one of the files and messed up the way the binary encoding was going to match to the previous version, like I reused field 6 again to mean something different in this new version, that's a breaking change. This step is going to check for that. If this doesn't pass, then we don't even generate the C# code, because what this job does is this job.
Well, so what if we needed a breaking change though?
Good question. So I did add this manual build where you can check this box to force code gen even with breaking change.
Okay.
And then so this is going to generate the code, because in the repo, and I'm going to show you the GitHub action in just a second, but the action is going to take these protos and it's going to create these C# files, which look like
Why
that.
do we need C# files?
Have you not covered that in a previous stream? So C# is
I'm sure we have, but again, like, doesn't hurt to spend 2 seconds.
yeah. So the client and the server are both using the C# mono version of Godot, and so when we send messages back and forth, it's via this C# communications library. What was the name of it? The library that we pulled in?
AMQP net.
No. So let's be careful. So AMQP NetLite is the library we're using to handle communicating with the AMQP broker.
Yes.
But on the C# side, so when we very first looked at it, I was like, hey, cool, Godot, like Protobuf. And somebody had written a GD script implementation of Protobuf file parsing. And then what I was trying to do was like load the GD script thing as a node so that I could access its functions within C#.
Yep.
And it just got hot mess ugly real fast. And
So
then
we
I
can
was like,
directly
wait a
build the
minute,
C#.
like, huh?
So we can instead just directly build the C#.
Well, yeah. And so so I found like a C#.net package that was available
For protocol
that could
buffers?
do the protocol buffer compilation.
Yeah.
So the .proto file is just a definition.
That's right.
It's language agnostic.
Correct.
And so Protobuf itself is not Java, it's not .NET, C#, it's not
more like
Python, it's
audio.
not Perl. Yeah, it's a design language of sorts. And then the language that you choose, the actual programming language runtime, needs to do the right thing to build the binary byte stream that represents the buffer. And so this compilation step that Jason's showing right now that does that generates the C# stuff, what it's doing is it's taking the protobuf as a definition and then generating C# code that provides an interface for generating, serializing, and deserializing the actual binary buffer based on the definition. And so similar to object-oriented programming, when you have a model that has a variable that's accessible called, hamburgers, and it's an integer, right? You can do like model instance dot hamburgers equals 7, right? I'm setting the number of hamburgers. And so what you'll see in our actual C# Godot game code is we will create a new message object, and then we will set the fields just like it's an object-oriented doodad. And then we call some serialization and other functions that we get from C#, right?
Yep.
That was a very long-winded explanation.
That's great, man. And this is the short reason it works, is that these classes that get generated with the proto data that we gave it are building off the core classes in that library.
Yeah, and the nice thing is, I mean, it's language agnostic, right? So there's protocol buffer tooling for almost any language you can imagine at this point, because it's been around quite some time and it's been heavily supported and backed by Google, right? So as an open source implementation, it's excellent.
When we built the first client against the old C++ game server, that first client was Phaser JavaScript, and so we found some random protobuf JavaScript implementation that would load the protocol buffer definition files and then give you a JavaScript interface to serialize and deserialize and do all the other stuff. So I guess let's look at the GitHub action.
Yeah, let's just check this out. And then as we identify if we need more language support, we can throw those in here and build those as well.
Go into other folders. Yeah. Good point.
That's why it says generated /C#. The workflow.
So any of you Open 3D Engine developers or Java developers or Unity, whatever, if you wanna build an SRT client, here we go. Well, I guess Unity C#, right? So we already got that covered.
Yeah. C# or among other languages.
The the action is pretty simple, straightforward.
So what is a GitHub action? Because not everybody might know what those are.
Yeah, so like if you haven't seen GitHub Actions before, the idea is that it can do CI/CD basically on actions you're taking within GitHub. So In this case, whenever on is where our trigger happens, on a pull request for the branch main or on a push for the branch main, we're going to do stuff. And that stuff could be all kinds of different things. Like in this case, we're doing some checks to make sure that the files are in here are valid and good. And then we're going to do that transpile, that compilation to generate our C# code. We could also do things like build containers in here or push containers to container registries. You can do a ton of stuff. You can nest these together.
Call APIs to do whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So it's pretty sweet. It's pretty versatile. The way this one works is two different jobs in here. The first one, check for breaking, which you saw visualized before. This uses this pre-built action called buff build. So these things just set up the environment for me. And then I can call.
And I think those uses, right? Those are all actually container images, aren't they?
I'm not sure.
Sort of, kind of under the covers. They're GitHub actions themselves, but I believe that GitHub actions are container images. So if you go to the GitHub, if you go to the buff build GitHub action page, I think it talks about how it's a container. It's like inside the GitHub environment, it's running container images, basically.
Yeah, maybe. But the cool thing about it is that you don't even care. As long as it works quick and runs, then at the end of the day, you said I mean,
that sounds a little scary, like
short stuff, and it's like
security concern, like what's in that action in the source of buff build, like is it sending our credit card information to China? But
yeah,
anyway.
Well, I definitely saw a one from some random dude's GitHub action, and I was like, you know what, I'm not going to use that one.
Good call.
Who knows when that guy's going to change it to steal my my credit card. Not that I have a whole lot of information in my GitHub. Everything's pretty much open. But so the next one after this passes, you can see that this one again, like says it needs that first one to pass for it to kind of keep going on. And in this one we go and do some .NET things. So I have to pull in a version. I get to select it here.
So if I remember correctly, the matrix statement is basically across all of these combinations of things, run the action all these times.
Yeah.
So if we had a matrix that included Python and JavaScript with specific versions, it would run the gen C# against all of those versions.
We could do that. We could do that, or we could create a whole new job that just says, gen Python. The reason I had the matrix in here is because at first I thought I was playing around with different versions of .NET to see if they were going to cause issues. And then I just kind of simplified and said, let's just stick with this first version, with this 6th version.
Or we should probably match whatever the version is that Godot is using.
Maybe so. So yeah, let's keep scrolling down through here. We only have a few minutes left, so we might not get.
Nope, we got till 4.
Oh, nice.
If you want.
Okay. Yeah, no, let's keep going. So we go through, we set up .NET for version 6.0.x, X meaning whatever 6.0 we want. We could even make this.
I think that'll probably pull the newest 6.0 available.
Yeah. Yep. Whatever the highest version for X can be. We could move the X over here and make it the highest.
Yeah. Ruby has a similar stuff for pulling in deps where you can specify like, which important number in the NVRC you want to care about. Anyway.
And then once that's set up, we run this. So this is a little bit different than what you guys have seen actually in the client and the server. I installed this Protobuf Protogen tool locally instead of globally. I think the way we had it in the instructions for people who wanted to try it on their own local machines, they were installing it for like the whole machine to use. In this case, we're just putting it directly in this environment that we built for .NET.
I probably only wrote it that way because I'm dumb and don't know how to do things. So that was like, run everything as root kind of, hackish. Just install Protogen for everybody.
Give everybody Protogen.
Yeah.
And then
get a Protogen.
Everybody gets a Protogen. And this is the .NET command that actually generates the code. It just runs that tool, tells it where the files need to go, which we saw was in the generated /C# file. And then if that works, it keeps on going down to the next piece, which is to push all that code to GitHub. So first we do a pull to make sure that just in case like anything got committed in a weird state, we want to kind of get the latest of the repo so that the commit will actually work. Then we add the files, and then we do a commit, and then we push.
So I mean, I'm a stupid developer and don't understand Git, but like if you're doing that pull after you've done the test, aren't you potentially running? Oh, but we've already done the gen, so I guess it doesn't matter. It still seems weird. Like that seems like you would end up with the C# next to a proto definition that you didn't actually run. It's like you've already generated it, but something changed while we were generating it. So we're pulling in a new proto definition and then committing the C# files along with proto files that we didn't actually use to generate the C# files.
In this case, I don't know that it really matters either way, because another push is going to generate another GitHub action, and it's going to override.
Yeah, but you'd end up with a weird commit in the middle. You're right. It probably doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things because we're not going to tag.
It would just be less clean.
An untested commit. You just have like this weirdo commit where it doesn't match. So if anything, like I would probably remove that git pull, but I don't really care.
Sure, we can do that. It's no big deal. Either way, I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference. So this one does have a weird bug that I wrote up, that GitHub, this is more like an annoyance than a bug, but
it's a feature.
Yeah, this is going to have this X if nothing's changed and you force ran it, because nothing changed and it's like there was nothing to git commit. I'll show you the actual error it gives you. It's going to be like, cool, everything generated, and then but the generated stuff was exactly the same, so I didn't have anything to commit. So I'm going to call that an error.
I think that's fine. We're probably not going to run this manually ever.
Yeah.
Or certainly not very often.
I mean, maybe you could put in a flag kind of option where it's like if you're forcing it to run without a commit, like just force commit or something. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah, and actually, yeah, that's if we look at the code again,
because that's what you kind of do with the yep.
This is this workflow dispatch. When you create this section, that gives you the option to force things, not just on triggers, and then you can put inputs into there.
Yeah, so maybe we could have like a force build trigger.
Yeah, if it checked this trigger, yeah.
Well, because the thing is, like, why would we ever want to force a build? It seems like you would only ever want to force a build to see if build itself works, not necessarily take what it built and push it back in. So maybe force build would just like do the build step and then skip the push commit stuff or something. I don't know, whatever. Doesn't matter.
And you can make a new workflow just by coming over here and saying, new workflow, or just actually just going in here and creating a new file and putting it in there. That's the kind of last piece I think I want to say about like GitHub Actions. If you're new to it, to create them, you just create a folder .github/workflows, throw them all in here, and they get integrated into your GitHub.
So technically, one could argue that this is GitOps, because we're defining things in Git, and in order to change the workflows, theoretically, you have to put them in Git and commit them.
Yeah, I wonder. Let's go and live stream search. Do we have an OpenShift? There we do. Yeah, we could do little ops from here, deploy to our cluster.
Yeah, if the cluster had a public. If we had a cluster,
it will. We need to get a cluster.
Had a public endpoint. Yeah, no, I know.
So,
so now we have C# in a folder, subfolder.
Yeah. So now we C# we have in a folder. We need to do. We want to update the client. We want to update the server so that we get rid of the existing proto files they've got, and we want to point to this Git repo
with a submodule.
So
how do I do that? Or do you want to do it?
I'm
Are you
gonna
gonna
hand
make me
it
do
back
it?
to you because I don't have. I just got a new laptop, so I don't have anything. I don't have the client and server working on my local machine.
That is a lame excuse. All right, so we are going to share a screen. We're going to share the top screen. We're going to share that. We're going to share the screen and the top screen. Okay, God only knows what's going to happen. So let's start with the server. Oh, my keyboard went to sleep. Oh God, wake up, Bluetooth keyboard. Come on, you can do it. Wakey, wakey. Oh boy.
Oh,
Oh,
last
there it
summon.
goes. There we go. Got it. It woke up. It goes to sleep and then it has to reconnect on Bluetooth, and sometimes Fedora and Bluetooth aren't good friends, and so it takes a very long time. Server. Okay. Main. What file is changed? Container file. What did I change? Oh, right. I need to fix that. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Okay, so let's check out a branch. First we'll pull because we're good little developers. Or at least we play them on TV. All right. Check out 2 proto submodule. Okay. How the heck do I add a submodule? Get submodules. That's the internet.
So I think we can do. I think it's pretty simple. I think we can just say
Give submodule add.
add.
But the question is, how do I tell it where to put stuff? By default, submodules will add the subproject into a directory named the same as the repo. You can add a different path at the end of the command if you want it to go elsewhere. So first challenge I see with what we're doing is github.com Red Hat Game Dev. Oh, Protobufs. So if we look at the server file system structure, which is horrifically bad and terrible and doesn't match the client, but that's fine. This is my hack job. Jason wrote most of the client. He's a much cleaner coder than I am. So I've got this proto folder that has the proto files and the C# files. So when we do the clone, we're going to end up with SRT protobufs folder generated C# as the destination of the C# files, which is fine, maybe. We'll see how that works. So from a good coding hygiene perspective, Mr. Jason, I should probably, do I want to move this folder into somewhere as well? Because like in the client, you've got all the networky stuff in its own folder.
Yeah, I like the idea.
And then you've even got server connection in its own folder.
I like the idea of it living in a networking folder.
Yeah, ultimately those are the message definitions, right?
It's definition of anything related to networking.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is where we're going to do live coding,
good
and it's
too
going to
because it'll nest it too. Because like you said, it's got that nested structure already in the other repo.
Sounds good to me. All right, so our 6 viewers are about to see some really terrible things. I don't want to file. See, I've already screwed it up. Networking. So we'll do this one step at a time. So we're going to have a networking folder, and we're going to cd into networking, and then we're going to do a git submodule add this, maybe.
HT.
We'll see.
It
should work.
Maybe.
Because I've got the SSH key.
Okay.
Or an SSH key that works.
Okay.
Okay, so it did it. So now the question is, we don't have any tags on this, and we just have the one branch, which is fine for now. So if I go into SRT protobufs, we see the proto files, which we actually don't need. And then if I go into generated C#, we see the C# files. So well, actually, I'm not going to ask that question yet. Okay, so at this point, I should be able to nuke the proto folder because we're not going to use it. So move to trash. And now things are going to start blowing up. So using Red Hat Game Dev SRT could not be found. What actually defined that originally? I'm pretty sure that was in one of the C# proto definitions or whatever.
It's been a
So
while
I'm gonna
since I've
close
seen that.
all here, and we're gonna open networking generated command buffer. So namespace Red Hat Game Dev SRT. So the question is, why isn't it finding the namespace, and it's also not finding it's not finding any of it, is basically the issue that it seems to be having right now.
And if
So
we were
this
really
is-
in a hurry, doing a symbolic link would be a quick way to probably work around.
Yeah, but that we don't want to do that.
No.
So the question is, why isn't it finding this stuff? Because it found them when they were just in the proto folder, and now it's just a few folders down. So this sounds like VS Code is not loading the full path. So I'm going to do the nuclear option, and I'm going to close that window. And then I'm going to make a new window and then reopen the server. And we'll see if it spelunks through everything and finds what it needs to find. It has not yet spit out any errors. So I think that fixed it.
Yeah, because I think the namespace should have been the same because the namespace was defined in the proto itself, right?
Yeah, the namespace is the same, but I'm sure there's some like VS Code thing that says like re-inspect the entire, because that was related to like IntelliSense and code completion and whatever, and the C# plugins and all that stuff. So I'm sure there's like
it hadn't updated.
Yeah, so at this point, everything is actually working, right? So there's no errors. This is clean. AMQP server or whatever. So my question to you, Jason, is what did you change at this point?
I try to change almost nothing so that it wouldn't be like
almost nothing's not nothing. So
yeah, I'm going to tell you exactly what I changed. So if you go to the proto files,
I see them. I'm here.
The box 2D one.
Box 2D proto. Okay.
Yeah. You'll notice I slimmed this one down a lot.
Oh, that is very slim.
Just to the things that it looked like we were using.
Okay.
In fact, I left the UUID in because I was unsure, but I'm pretty sure we don't even use that UUID because the parent message has its own UUID.
You might be correct.
So, and
then this body 2D is new, isn't it?
So that's the one we want to switch to. This is going to be like a little bit, the naming's a little bit cleaner. It uses vector 2D, which is what Godot calls it. It uses more like Godot type terms, like rotation degrees versus angle.
Got it.
And then we can grow that as we need to.
Got it. Okay, but
so
these are all here. So the server talking to itself with these protos should actually work.
Should just
hopefully. Stage changes, submodules, and this new folder. Okay, which is weird. I don't understand what this means.
It means that it knows you put a submodule in there.
Yeah. Okay. So if I come here and we do this. So for those who have been paying attention the entire time, which probably is not any of the 6 people that are watching, you can basically play the game on the server by yourself with the debug UI. So I can join a player and control that player and all the other stuff. So right now it's building the game, which it appears to have done. It has loaded config, which is fine. It's connected successfully to the AMQP. And if I come over here, we have the thing. So if I join a player, it did not explode. If I move the player, seems like it's working, velocity, position, hit points, etc. And if I shoot, it shoots.
Sweet. I was successful in not breaking everything.
So,
And the game is broken.
Erik again, yes.
would you agree?
Are you back? Okay. Yeah.
Major meltdown, as usual.
Cool.
It looks like it works.
Nice. So we need to do the same thing on the client and see if, I don't know if we can see if they talk to each other. And then we can start taking advantage of the newer data types. And the cool thing about, I think, the thing I think is the coolest about all this stuff, while Eric's sort of like chopping in and out, is that like this is all like the hard, like the CI/CD stuff is the stuff that like you don't think about when you're building a game. It's the stuff that you need, but you kind of maybe sometimes you put off, or like you don't want to do it yourself.
Backlog.
Yeah, but it like makes your life so much easier once it's all set up. Like whenever we start making changes to like the data structures and the communication now, and we have it automatically build for us, automatically updated in both the client and the server, and synced up and like logged and tracked and all that stuff. Like that's gonna make life way easier. And I think also once we get things containerized, we'll be able to run the server. Like we'll be able to do some of that CI/CD to like launch new versions of the
And
server.
automatically deploy it.
Yeah.
What is this? A stain? No, I don't want that. Oh, I see what that was doing. It's trying to stage a change into the Protobuf folder, which we don't want to do. Can you guys hear me again?
Yeah,
you're
you're back.
What's this file? That's in Protobufs. Well, okay, so I've got these changes staged. Switches to using submodule based Protobuf. Oh God. Yes. I think.
Did you say, oh God?
I did.
Did you break something?
Well, I committed changes and I wasn't sure that I put them in the right place. So push to Godot
What is
server.
done in Git can be undone in Git.
You say that as if it's true and easy, but I
didn't say it
have
was
had
easy.
some horrible things happen in Git. SRT, Godot.
My experience,
Server.
if you make a mistake, you just write over it. You don't try to undo
It's
it.
easier. That's true.
It can be, yeah. All right, we'll call this a work in progress. I'm not going to merge. Files change 16. Okay, so we get this Protobufs folder with a specific commit, which we should switch to a tag, but whatever. And then we have a submodule. Okay, so I'm going to leave this sitting. I'm going to build the server. Oh God, how do I do this? Export.
Yeah.
There we go. But I need to do that from the SRT folder. All right, let's try this. So I'm running Godot's exporter from the command line, and I didn't tell it to do it quietly, so it's going to show the UI while it does it. it worked. It didn't. We got the errors we expected. So timestamp 3:15. That's now. So this is good. If we run this, it did do the thing. Okay. Just for giggles. CPU. Wow, Chrome, that's a lot of CPU. Okay. Okay. You guys still hear me?
Yep.
I've turned off the. I think it has to do with my crappy CPU GPU. So I minimized the window that's showing all of you. So all I see is my terminal right now. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the client and I'm going to attempt to do the same thing. So bash. Oh gosh, let's see. Godot. Nope, I want the submodules, code, copy. Okay, go to VS Code, CD networking, git submodule, add this. Okay, delete proto, move to trash. And so how do I restart the IntelliSense or whatever?
Without restarting VS Code itself, I don't know.
Restart IntelliSense for the active file, debug restart, container restart, go restart, OmniSharp. Yes, that's probably it. I think that's the C# stuff. But for whatever reason, it seems like it didn't need it because it never blew up. And it just worked. Like nothing changed, no red.
Nice.
So in theory, the server's running in the background. So if I try to do a build, it might work. And I'm going to do it very quickly, and I'm not going to talk because my computer's probably going to melt down. So we'll see what happens. Hang on.
You'll hear your
Here we go.
phone.
You'll hear me, maybe.
Not to put you on the spot, Roddy, but do you have a running client on your side?
I do have a running client, or I don't have it actively running, but I had it running just before I ran the stream. So it can run.
We try to put 2 clients on the server.
Yes, if the server is externally exposed, I could do that.
It worked.
Woohoo!
Magic.
Good news.
Exit. Run away. Hey, so that worked, right?
Nice.
So it seems to have worked. So let's see. Bash. We are. Oh God, why are there 2? What did I do? Oh no, awful. Okay. Git pull from main. Wait, no. Right. Yes. Origin main. Okay. So now we're gonna check out to client, create a new branch, Protobuf submodule, create new branch. We're gonna go over here. Wow, what? Don't need that. Okay. Stay, this is that. We're gonna minimize you. Gonna make this bigger. Okay, we're gonna stage all the changes. Do the change. Client config, don't want you. I don't want to change that. Okay, here goes nothing. Oh no, I need a commit. Switches to submodule based protobuf. Control enter, control shift P, get pushed to client, my fork. Okay, did a thing. And now Red Hat Game Dev, SRT Godot client. Look at that. Compare and pull requests. Switches to submodule based Protobuf. Compare pull requests. Continuous integration has not been set up. Okay. So do we all agree that these two things worked?
Yes.
Looks good.
Okay. Doing it live. That is now officially in main.
I can put a
for the client.
LGTM in there if you need that.
No, it's
Make it all official. Like
we got a live LGTM, so I think we're good. Change the title from whip and merge. Oh, why is that whip? Damn it. Never mind. Too late now. Okay. That is now live with submodules. Look at that.
all right,
That
now I was
actually
able to
wasn't too
pull it,
bad.
no problem.
I would love to show Quay, but that's going to require some tomfoolery here. Because when Quay changed to like Red Hat off, it broke my ability to log in from my like Red Hat Chrome Google profile, so I have to use my personal one. How do I hide the bookmarks bar? Show bookmarks bar, go away. You guys don't need to see my weird bookmarks, although you can see them in my work. So if I come back here, I think it's going to be trying to do a build because I set it up to build trigger on, oh, it was disabled because it blew up. So the reason it's blowing up is because Quay right now doesn't support setting variables on container builds and or taking arguments or anything. And if we look at the container file, oh, I have a bad feeling about this. All right, well, I'm gonna close that for now. And I'm gonna close that. And because this is likely to go sideways very quickly. Container file, right. So if we look at the container file, the original author of this was expecting people to use this to like maybe use different export presets, but the server is only ever going to be exported for Linux X11 using the container methodology. So I can actually hard code this. So let's do bash. I find it faster to do this from the command line because I'm old school nerd. Git pull origin main. Okay, so now we are good, and the only files that are different are the container file. What this file? I don't understand why that's there. Am I supposed to commit that? This odd empty file? Whatever. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a new branch. Do some more live coding here. So I'm going to fix the container build. You guys still with me? Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here. Sorry, I was on mute.
Yep, I was on mute too.
Good. Godot server. We're going to create a new branch called hardcode container builds. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is fix this. So that should be source config logger.cfg. And so that should build now. It's getting thundery over here, so hopefully I won't disappear. My power's been pretty stable, so I think we're safe. All of the errors so far are expected. Hey, look, that succeeded. So we got a successful build. Okay, so first step complete. So when I ran that command, I was passing in the what? Oh, Godot project name. Build arg, Godot project name. That's what it is. Okay. So I'm actually gonna get rid of that. we don't need this arg. We don't need that. We are going to, well, actually, no, I can't remember what it was called. So we probably need to change the name from test at some point to actually just be server.
Yeah, that would make sense.
I
The
think
test
I'm
is
gonna check on
successful.
the-
It's graduated into server.
Yeah, it's real. It's real now. All right. Is there any place else that gets used? Export pack Godot export preset. That's hard coded here. So we're good. So I think this should build again if I try and build it again. I'm gonna get rid of the build arg and it should just work. So far, so good. Yeah, so again, we're only ever going to build this one way, and Quay doesn't support passing the arguments when you configure the build triggers. So we're just working around that. If we need other builds, we could actually just have different container files in different folders and have different contexts. Okay, successfully tagged. We are in good shape. So if I come over here, I'm going to add the container file. This is container file for Quay builds. We are going to push this to Godot server, my personal fork. Oh no, I need to open Chrome again. Sorry, this is awful. What are we doing? Oh, so many browser tabs in Windows. Okay. Personal browser. Quay.io. Gonna move you up top here. SRT Godot server. Should be a new pull request. I'm just gonna merge it because it's fine. Nobody's using the container build, but me, us.
Cool.
I have a lot of Quay stuff.
I imagine the servers, like once we get, this thing into like a rhythm of working, the server will probably get continual updates. And like, so being containerized is going to be like super beneficial for us to have, just to be able to continually build and roll this thing out.
Yes.
And sort of just as like a general thought thing, if this throws off your rhythm, Eric, tell me to shut up. That's fine. But I was thinking about before the call. I was I don't know if you guys downloaded Diablo Immortal. Like it's the mobile.
Yeah, I haven't played it yet.
I was watching it start up, and it was going through like its startup phase, and I was like, you know what, we probably need to add some of that stuff to our model too. It goes through and it does like the splash screen, but then it does like a check for updates. So the client, there's the assumption that the client's same exact versions potentially, because you don't control clients typically as a game architecture. Like we have complete control over the servers, but the clients are going to be whatever version somebody downloaded whenever they downloaded it.
Yeah, backward compatibility is going to be pretty important.
So there's like a little bit of like a buffer window where there's some things that you want to update the client, but maybe you make the decision to like kind of push that as a dynamic update from the server so the client can receive it on startup. So if we built like a system where the client could go, what version of the server am I talking to? Let me ask for my version. Are there any things I should pull down? And that sort of workflow.
Yeah, so there's two types of updates. So one is like I can update myself by just downloading some content, and then the other one is I actually need a new client, like a breaking client change that requires a new download that we should alert the user, like, hey, you need to update your client before continuing, like
go get
fully.
it separately.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, I don't know what that would look like in Godot land, because you've got that like binary compile. So if I don't know, this is taking a long time, but it's doing things.
Well, I was thinking the first step might be just adding some of that, the crawl, the getting started part. It will be, you know, just get it working, like pass some of that information back and forth so we can at least like make those decisions and have like
compare the list of resources, and maybe we have a version identifier associated with a package of resources. And if the version's different or if the resources have changed, then you need to be willing as a client to accept new stuff, either as an addendum, as a delta, or as
Right.
a new package.
Yeah. And so the first step is like, can Godot even do that?
I don't know if it does that out of the box. There might be a
Right.
plugin or
Because
something for it,
if we
right?
look at but if I go into the folder and look at the server, for example, there's the PCK file and then there's the binary, but like I think most of the junk is in the binary, but there's also like a zippy way to do it.
Yeah, and like the
And so I don't.
WASM's export does it a bit differently too, right? Because when you're on a web server and being hosted, like for Podescape, when Podescape comes up, it comes up with the initial logo, but then it has this progress bar, while actually like the PCK that's generated is downloaded to the client from the web server
Woo!
before the
It
game
worked.
can play, right?
It worked. We have a build. It built.
Yeah, and what Roddy's talking about in that case is for Podescape, it was being served as WebAssembly.
That's right, through, and just basically in an HTML file on Apache web server.
Yeah.
So here's the server that just got built. The image actually works. And so if I look at the info, it's Quay IO Godot server, right? Podman pull. I actually want a Podman run instead, but let's do just this part. Copy. Oh, my phone is like very excited. Go to the chiropractor. Okay, I'll do that shortly. Okay. So if we come back here, where did I run it in a container? Nope, that's because I need quotes. Okay, so now we can try again. Podman run it rm e srt mqp url equals mqp 192.168.1.252.5.6.2 Quay IO srt main. Okay, trying to pull. Look, it's doing it. It pulled it. Hooray! It did it, but it didn't work right. Could not load the config. The file does not exist.
The logger config.
Yep. It's the same problem we had before. So since we have time, we'll do some live troubleshooting. So what I want to do is entry point bash.
Is that the only
that?
problem that it has?
No.
I mean, the logger config has defaults, right? It's like not that.
Yeah, but the issue is that it breaks the initialization of the AMQP.
Okay.
Because the AMQP server tries to load the logger config and fails, and then it like just stalls.
Oh, let's fix that. Let's make it go. Didn't load the logger config. Like, I'll just stick with the defaults.
Oh god, that'll definitely never work. There we go. There's logger.cfg. Oh.
Hey, are we running AMQ Artemis in a container right now too, or is it running locally?
No, I'm just running it locally on my. I could have been running it in a container, but I'm not. I'm just running it locally.
Okay.
So now I got to do another container fix here. So git checkout main and git origin main and git checkout here. That works. So while I'm doing this, Jason, if you want to look at the code and see if you can figure out why loading the logger can like blows up the initialization of AMQP, go for it.
Okay.
But I think that's going to be like lost in node tree C# hell land.
Wow. That doesn't sound fun.
No, it's unlikely to be fun. Um, 112. So I rebuilt it locally. Hey, it worked. Look at that. All right, so let me do this. I will. Oh, okay, perfect. We're going to show some awesome CI here. So the build trigger is re-enabled. And so I am going to add the container file, fix the copy location of logger CFG for container build. I'm gonna push that to, oh God, damn it, I just committed to main. Did I? I did. I could have sworn I checked out. Okay, how do I undo the last commit? Is it reset head 1? Nerds, GitHub nerds, get nerds.
I usually do a rebase minus I head tilde1 and just drop it. That'll drop it locally.
I didn't push yet, so we're good.
Okay.
What do I do here now?
I don't know. I always do rebase base minus I.
Yeah, I just did that.
Okay.
And it brought me to this interactive whatever. So do I pick or do
You
I
drop. Assuming that
drop?
the commit you don't want, yeah.
Okay. But my unchanged file is now disappeared. My changes are disappeared.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't want to do that. I just wanted to I don't remember what I changed. It was 2 seconds ago. Oh, there it is. What? I don't understand what happened.
And VS Code would likely refresh, right?
Well, this is the current file, but this is the change that I made.
Or maybe it didn't refresh.
It definitely refreshed. I would assume it refreshed. Yeah, I thought that was the change that I made.
Let's do git status and see what it says.
It's not showing it. So fixes container file for Quay builds. But somehow this is the last commit, which is where yeah, that's not.
Yeah, and that was just then, right?
Yeah. So I don't know what to do. It's in main. I supposedly dropped it, but it didn't do that. And
Well, that commit was 10 minutes ago, wasn't it? 12 minutes ago. Because your computer clock there says 15:39, and that commit there was 15:27.
Okay, so then what did I just change? I just changed something and committed it, and I don't remember what it was.
So that wasn't it then.
I'm so confused. Hard code container build is what I did. That's what I merged. But this change was not part of hard code container build, I didn't think.
You do git status. Is there unstaged changes at the moment? No?
Nope.
Oh yeah, because you can see it in the VS Code.
Yeah, so here's where I did something and then undid it. I think the rebase like overwrote the last commit. I don't understand what that rebase just did.
You should have just dropped the commit locally. So that, for example, if you were one commit ahead locally, then your upstream, whatever that happened to be, and if you were to then pull upstream after dropping that one commit, you should be then in sync with the remote repository.
Well, then I don't know what the hell I changed and then unchanged.
Yep, not sure.
This is where we added the submodule and then merged it. And then this is where it's the hard coding. How did I change? Did I then unchanged in the container file? I don't understand. I swear to God, it seems like it like squished this change into here. Well, okay, here's an easy way to check.
Yeah, and so the latest change at GitHub was the merge
Yeah,
pull
it's
request
here.
number 37, which is
So
what you're showing as your head,
I don't
right?
understand. I'm so confused. I don't understand how I added a change to the container file, committed it to main, uncommitted it, and somehow can't remember 30 seconds ago. Whatever. So what was the last Quay build? The last Quay build was hardcode container build, but that image doesn't work because that image doesn't have it. Because this hardcode container build, oh, it has this, but it didn't work? Or did it already rebuild? I'm
Well, this
so
one
confused right
was
now.
1936, but what time zone was that in comparison to your laptop?
Yeah, so it's not there in the image that's on Quay, despite Quay having built this. Oh, dot. Oh, okay. Okay. Got it. Brain fart. Okay. Here we go.
So it's available locally, but it's not
Check
built in
out
the internet.
two. Godot server. Fix container.
So where does the logger.tfg exist at the moment?
It existed in dot. There we go. Okay, let's try this again. Now I see what happened.
So what happened?
So this was the change, but I was looking at dot
Oh, I see.
and thinking that was the change,
But
but
it
it actually
wasn't.
wasn't. All right, so let's.
The change was subtly different.
Yeah, I had changed something. I
Yes.
just forgot what it. I
forgot what it
legitimately
was.
forgot what it was.
Yeah.
Whew, my brain is fried.
So we're just trying to basically get these.
I'm trying to get the container build to work
Yeah.
with the log file in the correct location.
So we pull these log files from the source code in the container file. We say like we want to manually take these files from the source code and put them in these specific.
So Godot here. Let me show the build process. So when you do a Godot export, see how it does this like save pack?
Yeah.
And it. So there's a weird thing with how Godot builds stuff into the pack file, and in the export presets, I told it to. Oh, I think I lost that. Oh, I see. Okay, different problem. Let me double check something here. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked, but it'll make
No
sense
worries.
shortly.
Just trying to like explain what's going on to the audience.
Yeah. Okay. So this include filter thing. So actually, let me try. Hold on. So Godot doesn't copy every single file in existence into the pack file. And so that's why I was having to copy it into the container. But then you can tell it about stuff to explicitly include in the pack file. And so I forgot that I had done that for the client, but I didn't do it for the server. And so I just made that change to the export preset to tell it like include any file called .cfg. Here we go. You see it? So now it's actually included it in the pack.
Nice.
In the correct path.
There we go.
So I think if I run this now, it might work. Yeah, it did. Okay. So now it's in the pack.
And the logger
So I don't
config
have to.
is basically so that we can specify like the verbosity and what we want to like
Yep.
spit out from the server. And then there's another one that's for the networking for AMQ that lets us kind of specify details around that connection.
Well, it's the same logger config because it's the same logger used in both places, which is probably bad practice as well. So if we look at the server code, if we look at, sorry, close.
So it reads the file twice at the moment. Is that right?
No, but there's I guess what I meant was there's a logger.config and then there's also a client.config.
So so logger config is the configuration for the logging thing. Client config is where's the server and
Right.
any other like local special stuff that might be needed. So maybe, in the future that would be like resolution preferences.
Yeah, and I think it's okay for those to be separate.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, define separate.
Well, in individual files.
Yep, got it. Why did I come back here? Because I wanted to change the container file. Because we no longer need to copy the logger config. So the one change we should make is we should make the logging configuration also available via environment. Because right now it's not. It's hard coded to that file. All right, so let's try this one more time. Sorry if I'm moving a little fast. Okay, that's all built. Expected errors. And run the localhost version. That worked. Okay, so come back here, look at the changes. Yes, container file. All right, we don't need that copy anymore. Change the export preset. And I don't understand what this Protobuf diff empty file is for.
I'll do some Google food and see if I can figure out why that's being generated. It's auto-generated that, right?
Well, I think it's a VS Code thing because every time I hit plus, it doesn't do anything. And if I do a git status, we see this. And I think that's because I don't know why. Because it's a submodule, but Git is showing it I don't know. Seems like a weird Git thing.
You're in the server right now? Okay.
Yep.
What branch are you on?
Fixed container log file, whatever. But it'll do it in main too.
So is the submodule changed in that branch?
Nope.
Oh, well, that's why then. If you switch from main where the submodule existed to a different branch where the submodule didn't
Oh,
exist.
the submodule's in this branch though.
Okay.
This branch was forked from main.
Oh yeah, so it's just saying that it's not staged. It just means you haven't added it. Although it says on track content.
No, but if I try to add
Yeah,
it, it
that's
doesn't
weird.
add it.
Oh, you know
All
what?
right.
This might be a weird submodule thing.
Yeah.
I think there's like an update
What I
command that
said.
we need to do, like in a init. But I don't want, if it's not breaking anything, we can look at that later.
Okay, so now if I merge this to main, we should see a Quay build fire off. Boom, look at that. CI, baby. Okay, that's gonna take a long time. Anyway, that's probably a good stopping point.
Nice.
We did lots of things, all the many things. Screen
pretty
share,
good.
stop screen sharing. Ta-da. Yeah, so what did we do today? We played with Protobuf, we played with container builds, we played with messaging, we talked about exporting, we talked about Git submodules, compiling C# Protobuf for Godot, all kinds of things. Very
Yeah,
busy,
covered a lot of
busy
ground.
day.
So now that so this is the part that seems most interesting to me, and I'm curious if you guys want to work on something like this next, is that now that we've got things containerized, we can roll it out into like OpenShift and scale it up and play with how things happen.
Well, it can't scale yet because the server has no concept of ownership. And so every server would be handling everything and sending every update about everything. So you'd have two servers that were trying to claim the same player and sending updates for the same player
Right.
to all clients. So
Right.
there's no point in scaling it up because it's going to be very bad.
I don't mean doing it. I mean
putting the plan in place to see what is
Exactly, like,
required to make the next step towards scaling it out.
let's
Yes.
start to do the design for that part so that we can kind of get a feel for what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and what the concerns are that we need to separate.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we actually need to run it in OpenShift to start talking about those concerns. Like we can talk about those concerns before we ever do it. We could easily run it in OpenShift at this point, because if there's a simple Artemis container, we can fire that up, and then we can run the server in the container in OpenShift and tell it via environment variable about the broker. And then the only other challenge would be we're not doing AMQP over WebSocket, right? We're doing pure socket.
We are doing pure AMQP over TCP at the moment.
Yeah, so we would need, does it support SNI or is it pure?
It does SNI.
So we could potentially put it behind a route with HTTPS, and then it should route the traffic.
Yep.
So we could potentially get the server running and fire up a bunch of clients, but what would inevitably happen is the performance issue I had, where like it's slow as nuts because it's spewing just so many messages. But it's worth a try just to see, even with just 2 clients.
Just to get those things out there into the platform.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we don't know what the scalability of the game is with one server yet. So we probably just want to get the performance better with like Delta messaging or like selective updates or whatever, and start to do some of the client lerping and interpolation and dead reckoning before we worry about like horizontally scaling the server.
That makes sense.
And then potentially start thinking about storing state outside the server, and then practice like what happens if we kill the server. And then like it restarts,
right?
Because it should restart really fast if we kill the pod, right? It doesn't. The startup time on the server is like second, like not even a second practically. So if you nuke the server and then the server like fetched all the state from the cache or the data grid or whatever, like what would the player experience be? Because that's a common problem with a lot of these games, is like,
and who owns
if
the
the
player?
server poops, then everything's gone because the server contains all the state and it's stateless.
Right, but if
Does that make sense?
if the player data is in the cache, then if a pod comes back and we understand which player data is unclaimed by a server, then when the pod restarts the server, it can claim its area of player data.
We would just need to, yeah.
Right.
Well, in the case of a monolithic server where we don't have a horizontally scalable game initially, the first thing the server would do is ask the cache, like, please dump me all the information about all players.
Yeah, because
and
all players would be
missiles.
unowned. A single server.
Well, just ignore ownership, right? Like, just assume single server, no tenancy, no owner, whatever. So the server would just say when it starts, like, hey cache, like, do you know about any players? Cool. And then it would do all the normal creation, instantiation type stuff. Hey, do you know about any missiles? Cool. And then it would do, whatever it does. And then the clients just have to be smart enough to know, like, oh, I already know about that player. I'm just going to ignore that you're telling me to create them again. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So that'd be interesting. So it sounds like we got a month's worth of work cut out for us.
At least.
Cool. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for watching. I know some of you were here the whole time. I appreciate it very much. And for those of you that joined late, the whole thing will be available on Twitch and YouTube. And you can always look for more at OpenShift.tv. We'll see you next month. Same bat time, same bat channel. I think. I hope. Maybe.
See you, folks.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.